The vast emptiness of space suddenly crackled with activity as the long-range sensors aboard the UES Horizon lit up like a Christmas tree. Lieutenant Commander Samira Khoury's eyes widened as she processed the incoming data. "Captain, we're picking up an unusual signal at the edge of the Epsilon sector." Captain Elena Reyes strode across the bridge, her weathered face etched with curiosity. "Define unusual, Lieutenant Commander." Samira's fingers danced across the holographic interface. It's like nothing I've ever seen, Captain. The signal's encrypted, but it's not using any known algorithm. And there's something else." She paused, double-checking her readings. "There's a spatial distortion accompanying the signal, almost like a cloaking field," Captain Rice finished, her voice hushed. She straightened, addressing the bridge crew. "All hands to battle stations. Ensign Chen, set an intercept course. Lieutenant Dowdy, power up weapons systems but keep them offline. Whatever's out there, let's not give them a reason to shoot first." The Horizon surged forward, its fusion drives painting a trail of blue fire across the starscape. As they neared the source of the signal, the tension on the bridge was palpable. "Captain," Samira called out, "the signal's changing. I think it's a message." "On screen," Rise ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, filled with strange, swirling symbols that pulsed and shifted like living things. As the crew watched, transfixed, the alien script began to morph, rearranging itself into recognizable letters. "Helpless." Rise leaned forward, her grip tightening on the command chair. "Can we get a visual on the source?" "Negative, Captain," replied Lieutenant Dowdy. "The cloaking field is still active, but wait." He frowned at his console. "The field is fluctuating. I think it's failing." As if on cue, the space before them shimmered and rippled. Like a veil being lifted, a breathtaking sight was revealed. A fleet of alien ships, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, materialized before them. The vessels were organic in appearance, with graceful, flowing lines that seemed to defy traditional spaceship design. Their hulls glistened with an iridescent sheen, reminiscent of soap bubbles catching the light. But the beauty of the ships was marred by clear signs of damage. Several of the vessels bore ugly scorch marks, while others listed awkwardly, their smooth lines disrupted by gaping holes. "My God," Rise breathed. "Samira, are you getting any life signs?" The science officer nodded, her voice filled with wonder. "Thousands, Captain. But they're unlike anything in our database. The biorhythms are completely alien." Before Rise could respond, a new message flashed across the view screen. "We shone in peace. Sanctuary needed. Pursued by destroyers." "Pursued," Rise muttered. She turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Dowdy, full sensor sweep of the surrounding space. If these beings are being chased, I want to know about it yesterday." As the crew scrambled to assess the situation, the alien fleet slowly drifted closer. The largest of the vessels, a majestic ship that dwarfed even the horizon, positioned itself at the forefront. Its surface rippled, and a section of the hull became transparent, revealing the beings within. Collective gasps echoed across the bridge. The aliens were breathtaking. Humanoid in general shape, they possessed delicate, almost translucent skin that seemed to glow from within. Gossamer wings, reminiscent of dragonflies, but far more intricate, fluttered gently behind them. Their large, almond-shaped eyes shimmered with intelligence, and was that fear? "Captain," Samira said softly, "they're attempting to establish a direct communication link." Rise nodded, straightening her uniform. "Put them through." The view screen changed, now showing the close-up view of one of the aliens. Its features were androgynous, with high cheekbones and a crown of what looked like living crystal adorning its head. When it spoke, its voice was melodic, almost musical, with an underlying tone of urgency. "Greetings, beams of Earth," the alien said, its mouth moving in perfect sync with the translated words. We are the Zephyrians, and we come to you in our darkest hour. Our homeworld has fallen, our colonies destroyed. We fled across half the galaxy, seeking a people of compassion and strength. The legends speak of humanity's kindness. We beg you, grant us sanctuary. Captain Ray stepped forward, her voice firm but gentle. I am Captain Elena Reyes of the United Earth Ship Horizon. On behalf of humanity, I extend our sympathies for your plight. But I must ask, who pursues you, and why? The Zephyrians' bioluminescent skin pulsed with what seemed to be sadness. They are called the Krovax, a species that values only military might and conquest. They saw our peaceful ways as weakness, our advanced healing and empathic abilities as useless. The alien's voice faltered. They sought to enslave us, to use us as test subjects for their weapons. When we resisted, they chose extermination. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Rise opened her mouth to respond, but was cut off by a shout from Lieutenant Dowdy. Captain, massive energy spike detected. Something's coming out of faster-than-light travel. The view screen split, showing the Zephyrian on one side and a tactical display on the other. A massive shape was materializing at the edge of the sector. A ship that made the horizon look like a toy in comparison. By Allah, Dowdy whispered, it's bigger than anything in our fleet. Energy readings are off the charts. The new arrival hung in space like a predator, its hull bristling with weapon emplacements. Its design was angular and aggressive, a stark contrast to the organic grace of the Zephyrian vessels. As they watched, smaller craft began to launch from its hangars, fighters by the look of them. The Zephyrian leader's eyes widened in terror. The Krovax. They've found us. Its composed demeanor crumbled, replaced by naked fear. Please, you must help us. We cannot fall into their hands. Captain Rice stood rooted to the spot, her mind racing. The Horizon was a formidable ship, but they were grossly outgunned. Interfering could be seen as an act of war against an unknown, technologically superior species. But the alternative? She looked at the screen, at the terrified faces of the Zephyrians, then at her crew, each of them waiting for her decision. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Lieutenant Dowdy, power up all weapon systems. Ensign Chen, position us between the Zephyrian fleet and that monstrosity. Samira, get me a channel to Earth Command. Priority 1. As her orders were carried out, Reyes turned back to the Zephyrian leader. We'll do what we can to protect you. But I need you to transmit all the information you have on the Krovax. Weapons, tactics, weaknesses, anything that might give us an edge. The alien's eyes shimmered with what might have been tears. You would stand against them for us, knowing nothing about our conflict. Reyes allowed herself a grim smile. Let's just say humanity has a soft spot for underdogs, and we've never been fond of bullies. As the Horizon maneuvered into position, its weapon ports glowing with barely contained energy, the massive Krovax ship began to broadcast. A deep, guttural voice filled the bridge. Attention, human vessel. This is Warlord Grokthar of the Krovax Dominion. The creatures you shelter are property of the Dominion. Stand aside, or be destroyed along with them. Captain Rice took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. The next few moments would likely shape the course of human history. But as she looked at the grateful faces of the Zephyrians and the determined expressions of her crew, she knew there was only one choice. Warlord Grokthar, she replied, her voice steady. This is Captain Elena Reyes of Earth. The beings under our protection have requested asylum, which we have granted. Any aggressive action against them will be considered an act of war against humanity. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. So I suggest you think very carefully about your next move. As silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the hum of powered-up weapons and the rapid breathing of the crew, Captain Reyes steeled herself for what was to come. Humanity's first intergalactic conflict was about to begin, sparked by an act of compassion for a species they'd only just met. The stage was set. The horizon, a lone sentinel, stood between the battered Zephyrian fleet and the looming threat of the Krovax warship. As tensions reached a boiling point, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. Sanctuary and subterfuge. The tension in the United Earth Council chamber was palpable as Ambassador Lydia Chen stood before the assembled representatives. Her usually impeccable appearance was marred by dark circles under her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights spent in emergency sessions. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Council," she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The decision to grant sanctuary to the Zephyrians was not made lightly. Captain Ray's actions, while unilateral, were in line with our deepest values as a species. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A councilman from the Mars colony stood, his face flushed with anger. "Values? What about the value of our citizens' lives? We've effectively declared war on a technologically superior race." Ambassador Chen held up a hand, silencing the outcry. "The Krovax retreated following our standoff, but they'll be back. That's why I'm proposing Operation Stardust." The chamber's holographic display flickered to life, showing a small terraformed moon orbiting a gas giant in a remote system. "We've prepared a sanctuary for the Zephyrians here, in the Theta Centauri system. It's far from established trade routes and protected by a state-of-the-art cloaking field." As the council debated, light years away, the plan was already being set in motion. Dr. Ilara Voss wiped sweat from her brow as she supervised the offloading of yet another transport ship. The Zephyrian refugees streamed past her, their bioluminescent skin dimmed by exhaustion and fear. "Dr. Voss," a melodic voice caught her attention. She turned to see Zephyr, one of the alien elders, floating gracefully towards her. Despite the chaos around them, the Zephyrian moved with an otherworldly serenity. "Zephyr," Ilara greeted, managing a tired smile. "How are your people holding up?" The elder's crystalline crown pulsed with soft light. "We are grateful, Dr. Voss, but many are struggling to adapt. Our empathic abilities, the fear and uncertainty are overwhelming." Ilara nodded, her scientific curiosity piqued despite the circumstances. "I've been meaning to ask you about that. Your empathic and healing abilities, they're unlike anything we've encountered before." Zephyr's large iridescent eyes seemed to cloud over. "There is much to tell, but not here. Perhaps, would you join me for a walk later? There are matters I must discuss with you, away from prying ears." Intrigued and slightly unnerved, Ilara agreed. As Zephyr glided away, the doctor couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to step into something far bigger than she'd imagined. Halfway across the galaxy, in a luxurious penthouse on Earth's capital, a shadowy figure stood before an encrypted holographic display. The man's features were constantly shifting, never settling on one appearance for more than a few seconds, a telltale sign of advanced shape-shifting technology. "The humans have hidden the Zephyrians well," a guttural voice emanated from the display. "Your progress, Agent Vex." The shape-shifter's form solidified into that of a nondescript human male. "I've infiltrated the lower levels of Earth's defense ministry, Warlord Grokthar. But the location of the Zephyrian sanctuary is highly classified. I need more time." The Krovax warlord's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Time is a luxury we cannot afford. The longer the Zephyrians remain free, the greater the risk of their abilities being weaponized against us." Agent Vex bowed low. "I understand, my lord. I have initiated Phase 2 of our plan. Sleeper agents are being activated in key positions across human space. We will sow chaos and discord from within." "See that you do not fail, Agent Vex," Grokthar growled. "The Dominion does not tolerate disappointment." As the transmission cut off, Vex allowed himself a small smile. Humans were so easily manipulated. Soon, they would tear themselves apart, and the Zephyrians would be ripe for the taking. Back on the sanctuary moon, Ilara followed Zephyr through a bioluminescent forest. The alien flora pulsed with soft light, responding to their presence. Despite the beauty around her, Ilara couldn't shake her unease. "What I'm about to tell you," Zephyr began, his voice barely above a whisper, "is known only to a select few of my people." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "The Krovaks hunt us not just out of disdain for our peaceful ways, but out of fear." Ilara frowned. "Fear? Of what?" Zephyr's wings fluttered nervously. "Of what we once were. Of what we could be again." His skin pulsed with swirling patterns, conveying emotions beyond words. "Eons ago, the Zephyrians were not the passive healers you see now. We were warriors of the mind, capable of bending reality itself through sheer force of will." The doctor's scientific mind reeled at the implications. That's impossible, is it?" Zephyr challenged gently. "You've seen our healing abilities, our empathic projections. These are but shadows of our true potential." He gestured to his crystalline crown. "These aren't decorative. They're psionic amplifiers, relics of our past. Most have forgotten their true purpose." Ilara's head spun with questions, but before she could voice them, a piercing alarm shattered the serenity of the forest. Red emergency lights bathed the area, and a computerized voice rang out. "Security breach detected. All personnel report to designated safe zones." Zephyr's eyes widened in terror. "They found us," he whispered. Ilara grabbed the alien's arm, surprised by how fragile it felt beneath her grip. "Come on, we need to get to the command center." As they raced through the panicking crowds, Ilara's mind raced. How had they been discovered? The moon's cloaking technology was supposed to be impenetrable. Unless... Her blood ran cold as realization dawned. We have a traitor in our midst. In Earth's orbital defense headquarters, alarms blared as stations across the planet reported simultaneous attacks. Terrorist bombings, cyber attacks, and mass riots erupted in major cities worldwide. Admiral Helena Frost barked orders as reports flooded in. "I want every available ship on high alert. Something's not right here." Her aide, Lieutenant Aiden Rodriguez, approached with a grim expression. "Admiral, we're getting reports of shapeshifters, infiltrators in high-ranking positions." Frost's eyes widened. "My God, it's a coordinated attack. Get me a secure line to the sanctuary moon now." But as Aiden turned to carry out her order, his form shimmered and changed. In the blink of an eye, Admiral Frost found herself staring at a grotesque, insectoid creature, a Krovaks in its true form. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Admiral," the creature hissed, its mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. Frost reached for her sidearm, but the Krovaks was faster. A stinger-like appendage shot out, injecting her with a paralyzing toxin. As darkness closed in, Frost's last thought was of the Zephyrians and the terrible danger they were in. On the sanctuary moon, Ilara and Zephyr burst into the command center. Chaos reigned as human and Zephyrian personnel scrambled to respond to the crisis. Colonel Javier Ortiz, the head of Moon's security, spotted them. "Dr. Voss, we have multiple breaches in the cloaking field. Somehow, they knew exactly where to hit us." Ilara's mind raced. "Colonel, I think we have infiltrators. The Krovaks must have." Her words were cut short as the main view screen crackled to life. The face that appeared sent chills down her spine. It was her own. "Greetings, insects," her doppelganger sneered, its features morphing into the alien visage of a Krovaks. "Your pathetic sanctuary has fallen. Even now, our fleet approaches. Surrender the Zephyrians, and perhaps we'll grant you quick deaths." As panic threatened to overwhelm the command center, Ilara felt a calm suddenly wash over her. She turned to see Zephyr, his eyes closed in concentration, his crown glowing with increasing intensity. "No," the Zephyrian elder said, his voice resonating with newfound strength. "We will not hide any longer. It's time for the Zephyrians to remember who we truly are." As if in response to his words, a wave of energy pulsed through the room. Ilara watched in awe as the other Zephyrians present began to glow, their eyes snapping open with a fierce determination. she hadn't seen before. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the fate of 3 species and change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. As the Krovax fleet loomed ever closer, the true power of the Zephyrians was about to be unleashed. Hidden talents unleashed. Chaos engulfed the sanctuary moon as alarms blared and emergency protocols activated. In the heart of New Haven, the largest Zephyrian settlement, panic spread like wildfire. Families huddled together, their bioluminescent skin flickering with fear as human security forces rushed to establish defensive positions. Amidst the mayhem, a young Zephyrian named Lyra found herself separated from her parents. Her delicate wings fluttered nervously as she navigated the crowded streets, dodging panicked refugees and hurried soldiers. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the area. Lyra looked up in horror to see a Krovax dropship breaking through the atmosphere, its hull gleaming menacingly in the artificial sunlight. As the ship descended, its cargo bay opened, disgorging a platoon of Krovax shock troops. Their insectoid forms, encased in sleek battle armor, hit the ground running. Energy weapons blazed to life, cutting down the first line of human defenders. Lyra froze, paralyzed by terror. A Krovax soldier spotted her, mandibles clicking in anticipation as it raised its weapon. Time seemed to slow down. In that moment of extreme stress, something awakened deep within Lyra's mind. Her crystalline crown, until now a dormant relic, blazed with sudden, brilliant light. Lyra's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly energy. She raised her hands instinctively, and a shimmering barrier of pure psionic force erupted around her, deflecting the Krovax's energy blast. The young Zephyrian gasped, shocked by her own actions. But there was no time to process what had happened. All around her, civilians were in danger. Acting on pure instinct, Lyra extended her psionic shield, enveloping nearby refugees in its protective embrace. From the command center, Dr. Ilara Voss watched the unfolding scene with a mixture of awe and scientific fascination. "Zephyr," she breathed, turning to the elder, "what's happening out there?" Zephyr's eyes were closed in concentration, his own crown pulsing with energy. "The awakening has begun," he said, his voice resonating with power. "Lyra's actions have triggered a cascade effect. The dormant abilities in our young are activating." All across New Haven, young Zephyrians were manifesting extraordinary abilities. Some created protective barriers like Lyra, while others demonstrated telekinetic powers, hurling debris at the invading Krovax. A few even showed signs of telepathy, coordinating defense efforts with uncanny efficiency. Colonel Ortiz, monitoring the situation, couldn't believe his eyes. This changes everything," he muttered. Ilara nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to coordinate with these newly awakened Zephyrians, if we can integrate their abilities with our defensive strategies." Her words were cut short as the command center's doors burst open. A squad of human soldiers rushed in, led by Major Sarah Chen, Ortiz's second-in-command. "Sir," Chen reported, her voice tense, "we've managed to repel the initial assault, but our long-range sensors show a massive Krovax fleet approaching. We're outnumbered and outgunned." Ortiz's face hardened. "Options?" "I might have one," Ilara interjected. All eyes turned to her. "The Zephyrians' awakened abilities. If we can understand and harness them quickly enough, we might stand a chance." Zephyr nodded solemnly. "Dr. Voss is right. But to do this, we'll need to act fast. Our younglings will need guidance to control their newfound powers." Ortiz made a quick decision. "Do it, Dr. Voss. You're our expert on Zephyrian biology. Work with Zephyr and set up a crash course in whatever this is, psionics." Ilara nodded, already moving towards the exit with Zephyr. "We'll need a secure location and volunteers, both human and Zephyrian." As they left, Ortiz turned to Major Chen. "Sarah, I need you to coordinate our conventional defenses. Buy us as much time as you can." Chen saluted crisply, but as she turned to leave, her form shimmered and distorted. In the blink of an eye, The Major was replaced by a Krovax infiltrator. It lunged at Ortiz with inhuman speed, a wicked stinger emerging from its arm. The Colonel barely had time to react, but years of combat training kicked in. He dodged the initial strike and grappled with the creature. They crashed into a console, alarms blaring as delicate equipment shattered under their weight. Security breach in the command center. Ortiz managed to yell into his comm unit before the Krovax's stinger found its mark. He felt a burning sensation in his side as the toxin entered his system. The world started to blur, but Ortiz fought against the encroaching darkness. With his last reserves of strength, he reached for his sidearm and fired point-blank into the creature's midsection. The Krovax screeched in pain, its grip loosening just enough for Ortiz to push it off. As security forces burst into the room, Ortiz's vision faded to black. In a hastily repurposed warehouse on the outskirts of New Haven, Ilara and Zephyr had assembled a group of newly awakened Zephyrians and volunteer human subjects. The air crackled with nervous energy as Ilara addressed the group. "What we're attempting here is unprecedented," she began, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're going to try to understand and develop your abilities in a matter of hours, rather than the years it would normally take." Zephyr stepped forward, his gentle presence calming the anxious crowd. "Remember, young ones, these abilities are not foreign to you. They are a part of who you are, who we once were. Trust in yourselves and in each other." As they began their crash course in psionics, Ilara couldn't help but marvel at the rapid progress. Young Zephyrians were levitating objects, creating complex illusions, and even demonstrating rudimentary healing abilities. The human volunteers, while unable to manifest these powers themselves, showed an unexpected aptitude for mental resilience against psionic influence. Lyra, the young Zephyrian who had first awakened her powers, proved to be exceptionally gifted. Under Zephyr's guidance, she was able to project her psionic barriers over increasingly large areas. Hours passed in a blur of intense training and rapid discoveries. Ilara's scientific mind was in overdrive, correlating the Zephyrians' abilities with changes in their physiology. She was on the verge of a breakthrough in understanding the mechanism behind their powers when her comm unit chirped urgently. "Dr. Voss," a strained voice came through. It was Major Chen, the real one this time, having been found unconscious in a storage closet. "We need you and the Zephyrians at the front lines. Now, the Krovax fleet has entered orbit, and they're launching a full-scale invasion." Ilara looked at Zephyr, seeing her own mix of determination and fear reflected in his alien eyes. "We're on our way," she replied. As they mobilized their makeshift psionic defense force, a commotion near the warehouse entrance caught Ilara's attention. A group of security officers were dragging in a struggling figure, a human scientist she recognized from her own research team. "Dr. Reeves?" Ilara asked, confused. "What's going on?" The head of security, his face grim, answered, "We caught him trying to transmit classified data on Zephyrian abilities to an unknown off-world source. He's been working for the Krovax." Reeves, his face a mask of defiance, spat at Ilara's feet. "You fool. The Krovax offered me power beyond imagination. Why side with these weak, pathetic creatures?" Before Ilara could respond, Lyra stepped forward. The young Zephyrian's eyes glowed with psionic energy as she placed a gentle hand on Reeves' forehead. The traitor's eyes widened in shock, then glazed over. "So much fear," Lyra murmured. "So much anger." She turned to Ilara, her expression sorrowful. "I saw into his mind. The Krovax have agents everywhere, on Earth and in the colonies. This is bigger than just us." Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. The sanctuary had been compromised. Earth was under attack, and now they faced a full-scale Krovax invasion. As she looked at the determined faces of the humans and Zephyrians around her, she realized that the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but potentially the fate of the entire galaxy. "Let's move out," she said, her voice filled with a resolve she didn't entirely feel. We have a world to defend. As they marched towards an uncertain future, the sky above New Haven lit up with the fire of orbital bombardment. The final battle for the sanctuary moon had begun. Galactic Gambit. The sky above New Haven burned with the fury of orbital bombardment. Krovax warships loomed ominously in low orbit, their massive silhouettes blotting out the stars. On the ground, chaos reigned as waves of Krovax shock troops clashed with the desperate defenders of the sanctuary moon. Amidst the carnage, an unlikely alliance of humans and Zephyrians fought with everything they had. Human soldiers, their weapons blazing, provided cover fire as young Zephyrians unleashed their newly awakened psionic abilities. Shimmering barriers deflected energy blasts, while telekinetic forces hurled debris at the invaders with devastating effect. Dr. Ilara Voss found herself in the thick of the action, coordinating the psionic defense from a makeshift command post. Her scientific mind raced, analyzing the effectiveness of each Zephyrian ability and relaying tactical advice to the defenders. "Lyra," she called out, spotting the young Zephyrian. "We need a barrier around the medical center. Now." Lyra nodded, her crystalline crown pulsing with energy as she extended her psionic shield. Just in time, too. A barrage of Krovax artillery fire impacted harmlessly against the shimmering force field. But for every small victory, the defenders suffered setbacks. The Krovax numbers seemed endless, and their advanced weaponry was taking a toll. Ilara knew they were fighting a losing battle. "Dr. Voss," the voice crackled over her comm unit. It was Colonel Ortiz, his voice strained. He had insisted on returning to duty despite his injuries. "We can't hold out much longer. We need a game changer, and we need it now." Ilara's mind raced. They had been so focused on defense that they hadn't considered a counterattack. But what could they possibly do against a fleet of warships? Suddenly, Zephyr was at her side, his ancient eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and determination. "There is a way," he said softly. "But the cost, it may be too high." Ilara turned to him, hope and dread warring in her chest. "Tell me." Zephyr's voice was barely above a whisper. "In the age of our ancestors, the most powerful of our kind could join their minds in a psionic meld. United, their power was immeasurable, capable of influencing events on a galactic scale. But," Ilara prompted, sensing the unspoken caveat, "but such a meld puts immense strain on the participants. Many would not survive the process." Ilara felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Risk the lives of their most gifted Zephyrians on a desperate gambit, or face certain defeat. Before she could respond, the ground shook violently. A massive Krovax dropship had broken through their perimeter, disgorging a fresh wave of troops dangerously close to their position. "We're out of options," Ilara said grimly. "Zephyr, gather your most powerful shins. I'll inform Colonel Ortiz of the plan." As Zephyr moved to carry out her orders, Ilara turned to find Lyra standing behind her, fear and determination warring in her young eyes. "I want to join the meld," Lyra said, her voice surprisingly steady. Ilara shook her head. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous, and you're too young." "But I'm one of the strongest," Lyra argued. "You need me." Before Ilara could protest further, another explosion rocked the area. She looked at Lyra, seeing not a child, but a soldier ready to fight for her people. "All right," Ilara conceded, "but you follow Zephyr's lead, understood?" Lyra nodded solemnly and hurried off to join the other shins. With a heavy heart, Ilara contacted Ortiz. "Colonel, we have a plan, but I need you to buy us some time. And to prepare for significant casualties." There was a pause on the other end. "Understood, Doctor. May whatever gods are out there be with us all." High above the embattled moon, aboard the Krovax flagship, Void Reaver, Warlord Grokthar watched the battle unfold with growing impatience. "Why haven't we crushed these insects yet?" He snarled at his subordinates. A nervous officer approached. "My lord, the humans' defenses are more resilient than anticipated. And the Zephyrians, They're displaying abilities we've never seen before. Grokthar's massive fist slammed down on his command console. Excuses. Intensify the bombardment. I want that moon turned to glass. As the Krovax fleet repositioned for another assault, a flicker of movement caught Grokthar's eye. A small ship had detached from the far side of the moon, quickly accelerating away from the battle. "What is that?" he demanded. The sensor officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "It appears to be a human vessel, my lord. A courier ship." Grokthar's eyes narrowed. "Trying to slip away in the chaos, are they? Dispatch a hunter-killer squad. I want that ship captured or destroyed." As orders were relayed and ships moved to intercept, Grokthar couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about this didn't feel right. Back on the moon's surface, in a secluded cavern deep beneath New Haven, Ilara watched as Zephyr guided a group of Zephyrians through the preparations for the psionic meld. 12 of their most powerful Pshins, including Lyra, sat in a circle, their crystalline crowns glowing with increasing intensity. "Are you sure about this?" Ilara asked Zephyr one last time. The elder Zephyrian's eyes were sad but resolved. "No, my friend, but it is our only hope." As Zephyr took his place in the circle, Ilara activated her comm unit. "Colonel Ortiz, we're ready. Whatever happens, it's been an honor." "Likewise, Doctor," came the gruff reply. "We'll hold the line as long as we can." Ilara took a deep breath and gave Zephyr a nod. The elder began to chant in an ancient Zephyrian tongue, his voice resonating with power. One by one, the other Zephyrians joined in, their voices blending into a haunting harmony. The air in the cavern grew thick with psionic energy. Ilara's hair stood on end, and she felt a pressure building in her mind. The Zephyrians' bodies began to glow, their forms becoming indistinct as the meld took hold. Suddenly, a burst of blinding light filled the cavern. Ilara shielded her eyes, her scientific instruments going haywire. When she could see again, she gasped in awe. Where the 12 Zephyrians had sat, there was now a single being of pure energy. It towered to the ceiling, its form constantly shifting and pulsing with unimaginable power. The being spoke, its voice a chorus of all the melded minds. "We see everything." Before Ilara could respond, the energy being phased through the cavern roof, rising into the sky above New Haven. On the bridge of the Void Reaver, alarms blared as sensors detected a massive energy spike from the moon's surface. "My lord," the sensor officer cried. "Something is emerging from the planet. Our readings are off the charts." Grokthar watched in disbelief as a colossal being of pure energy rose from the moon, dwarfing even his massive flagship. For the first time in his long, brutal life, the Krovax warlord felt fear. "All ships, open fire," he roared. "Destroy that thing." The Krovax fleet unleashed its full arsenal, energy weapons, and missiles streaking towards the psionic entity. But the attack simply passed through it, as if it wasn't fully present in normal space. The being raised a hand, and suddenly every Krovax ship in the fleet shuddered to a halt, their systems going dark. "This ends now." The multitude of voices spoke directly into the minds of every being in the system. As Grokthar watched in helpless rage, the psionic entity began to glow even brighter. A wave of energy pulsed outward, engulfing the entire Krovax fleet. In that moment, as his ship's systems flickered and died around him, Grokthar realized that the Krovax's reign of terror was over. The Zephyrians, those he had dismissed as weak and useless, had become something beyond his comprehension. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the small courier ship, now far beyond his reach, jumping to faster than light speed. In his final moments of awareness, Grokthar understood that this battle had been just one move in a much larger game. As the psionic wave spread outward, carrying with it the combined will of the melded Zephyrians, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The galactic gambit had been played, but its true consequences were yet to be revealed. Revolution of the Week. The aftermath of the psionic surge left an eerie calm over the sanctuary moon. Krovax ships hung motionless in orbit, their crews incapacitated by the mental onslaught. On the surface, the invading forces lay scattered and unconscious, their fearsome weapons rendered useless. Dr. Ilara Voss emerged from the underground cavern, her eyes squinting against the harsh sunlight. The battlefield that greeted her was surreal. A frozen tableau of a war suddenly halted. Dr. Voss. Colonel Ortiz's voice crackled over her comm. What in God's name just happened? Ilara surveyed the scene, her scientific mind struggling to process the events. The Zephyrians. They did it. Somehow, they neutralized the entire Krovax fleet. As the defenders of New Haven cautiously emerged from their positions, a shimmering form descended from the sky. The psionic entity, still radiating immense power, touched down in the central plaza. Slowly, it began to separate into 12 distinct forms, the Zephyrian Shuns who had formed the meld. Ilara rushed forward, her heart pounding. As the glowing energy dissipated, she saw Zephyr and the others collapse to the ground, their bodies weak from the immense strain. Lyra, she called out, spotting the young Zephyrian. To her relief, Lyra's eyes fluttered open, a weak smile crossing her face. Did we win? Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ilara nodded, tears in her eyes. Yes, little one, you did it. You saved us all. As medical teams rushed to attend to the exhausted Shuns, Colonel Ortiz approached, his face a mix of awe and concern. Doctor, we're receiving transmissions from all over the sector, the psionic wave. It didn't just affect our system. Reports are coming in of Krovax fleets and outposts going dark across half the galaxy. Ilara's eyes widened. The meld. It must have been even more powerful than we imagined. But what about? Her question was cut short as her comm unit buzzed urgently. A familiar voice came through, tight with excitement. Dr. Voss, this is Captain Elena Reyes of the courier ship Stardust. Mission accomplished. We've made contact with the Coalition of Free Worlds. Reinforcements are on their way. A cheer went up from the gathered humans and Zephyrians as the news spread. The gambit had paid off. While the psionic meld had neutralized the immediate threat, the Stardust had slipped away to seek help from other spacefaring civilizations who had been oppressed or threatened by the Krovax. As the initial euphoria subsided, the enormity of the situation began to sink in. Ilara turned to Ortiz, her scientific curiosity taking over. Colonel, we need to establish contact with Earth immediately. The geopolitical landscape of the entire galaxy has just shifted. We need to be prepared for what comes next. Ortiz nodded grimly. Agreed. And we need to secure the Krovax prisoners. Something tells me their intelligence will be crucial in the days to come. In the following weeks, the sanctuary moon became a hub of frenetic activity. Ships from the Coalition of Free Worlds arrived, bringing much-needed supplies and support. Delegations from various alien species, long oppressed by the Krovax, came to meet the Zephyrians and humans who had turned the tide. Ilara found herself at the center of it all, working tirelessly to understand and document the full extent of Zephyrian abilities. In a makeshift laboratory, she collaborated with scientists from a dozen different species, each bringing unique perspectives and technologies to the research. The implications are staggering, she explained to a gathered group of diplomats and military leaders. The Zephyrians' psionic abilities seem to operate on a quantum level, allowing for instantaneous communication and influence across vast distances. A reptilian alien leaned forward, its scales shimmering with interest. Could this be weaponized, used as a form of faster-than-light communication? Ilara hesitated, glancing at Zephyr, who stood quietly in the corner. Potentially, but the ethical implications. Ethics? A human admiral scoffed. The Krovax are down, but not out. We need every advantage we can get to ensure they never threaten us again. The room erupted into heated debate. Ilara watched with growing unease as various factions argued over the military applications of Zephyrian abilities. This was exactly what she had feared, that the weak would be seen as nothing more than a new kind of weapon. Suddenly, a calm voice cut through the chaos. Perhaps we are asking the wrong questions. All eyes turned to Lyra, who had entered the room unnoticed. The young Zephyrian's presence seemed to radiate a sense of peace and clarity. Our abilities are not meant for destruction. Lyra continued, her voice gentle but firm. They are meant for connection, for understanding. We touched the minds of the Krovax during the melt. We felt their fear, their anger, and their pain. A hush fell over the room as Lyra walked to the center, her crystalline crown glowing softly. The Krovax became conquerors because they feared weakness. They saw compassion as a flaw to be purged. But in doing so, they lost something essential. They forgot how to connect, how to empathize. Lyra's eyes met Ilara's, and the doctor felt a surge of pride for how much the young Zephyrian had grown. We have an opportunity now, Lyra continued, not just to defeat the Krovax, but to heal them, to show everyone. That true strength comes from unity, from understanding. The gathered leaders murmured among themselves, some nodding in agreement, others looking skeptical. But Ilara could see that Lyra's words had struck a chord. An elderly Zephyrian stepped forward, his wizened face etched with emotion. In our ancient histories, there are tales of a time when our people used their gifts not for war, but for peace. We were mediators, healers of rifts between worlds. The human admiral frowned. That's all well and good, but the Krovax will face justice for their crimes, Ilara interjected, a plan forming in her mind. But consider this, what if we could rehabilitate them? Use Zephyrian abilities not to control or destroy, but to heal the psychological traumas that led to their aggression in the first place. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. It was a radical proposal, one that challenged centuries of thinking about warfare and justice. Zephyr, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up. It will not be easy. The road ahead is long and fraught with challenges. But if we succeed, we could usher in a new era of peace and cooperation in the galaxy. As the discussion continued, now with a new focus on rehabilitation and peaceful applications of Zephyrian abilities, Ilara felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Colonel Ortiz, his face grave. "Doctor, we've just received word from Earth. The Krovax sleeper agents, they're making their move. Major cities are in chaos." Ilara's heart sank. They had won the battle here, but the war was far from over. "We need to go back," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Earth needs us, needs all of us." As she looked around the room at the assembled allies, humans, Zephyrians, and a dozen other species once deemed weak by the Krovax, Ilara realized that this was just the beginning. The real revolution was yet to come. "Prepare for immediate departure," she ordered, her voice ringing with authority. "We're taking the fight back to Earth. And this time, we're bringing the strength of the entire galaxy with us." As the room burst into action, Ilara caught Lyra's eye. The young Zephyrian nodded, a look of fierce determination on her face. Together, they would show the universe that true power lay not in domination, but in unity. The revolution of the weak had begun, and its echoes would reshape the very fabric of galactic civilization.